Hockey Inside Out, brought to you by Videotron.
Welcome to another episode of Hockey Inside Out, joined today by Michael Farber from Sports Illustrated and the Gazette's Dave Stubbs. I guess Michel Therrien might have had a couple of drinks after that win over Carolina the other night. The heat was definitely was on him, Mike.
It was, but I think he's safe for this season. There's no reason to change, and I'll let you in on a little secret. Coaches don't make that much of a difference in the National Hockey League. Some do, with John Cooper in Tampa, Mike Babcock, maybe Barry Trotz in Nashville. But really, these are just guys. They're saying the same thing. The messages are the same. They might tweak a breakout. They might tweak some coverage. They might juggle a line. But there are very few coaches who are difference makers.
We're not back to Toe Blake anymore in Montreal, where Toe would just allegedly open the gate and let the players go out and win Stanley Cups, right? That's not going to happen anymore. We're 21 years this spring removed from a Stanley Cup, and we're going to be 22 years removed from a Stanley Cup in Montreal the year after this. So I don't think that Scotty Bowman would make that much of a difference, to be honest, with his club. I think that, you know, what would happen is you would get a bit of a bump in performance. Guys would suddenly see that somebody new had walked into the dressing room. There might be a little bit of a tweak in how things were being done. Just the fact that there was a new face on the landscape would change things, but I think what would happen pretty quickly is that the talent would level back off. And it reminds me when Jacques Martin was fired and Randy Cunneyworth came in, and all the players were excited because here came a new guy. No one liked Martin. They didn't like the system he was using, and Cunneyworth came in and said, "Boys, I like the system we're using. Let's just pick up where we left off." And you could literally hear the air escape the balloon.
Well, I think the technical term for what you're describing, Dave, is the dead cat bounce. A new coach comes in, and there's a small bounce. It's like when you take a cat and drop it off the 25th floor of a building. It'll hit and then bounce up a little bit.
I hope you've never done that.
No, but it has been done. So that's what you get, and I'm not sure there's a fix. And also you have to remember, if you fire Therrien at midseason, and given the restrictions the Canadians have placed upon themselves with a French-speaking coach, who's out there? Guy Boucher this week went to Switzerland. Sylvain Lefebvre is down in Hamilton, but I don't see him as a head coach. I think he's a position coach, and he probably should have been here this year working with P.K. Subban and the defense. So I don't see a logical candidate out there. Maybe something happens in the offseason if you want to replace Therrien then, but as I said, I don't believe it makes much of a difference.
These fans talking to me when Boucher is named a coach with Bern in Switzerland until 2016 saying, "I don't see anything in the press release about the out clause." Well, Bern is actually going to have that in their press release. Oh yeah, as soon as an NHL job comes up, this guy's out of here, right? He's going back to Montreal like poop through a goose. Well, no, that's not happening either, okay? I mean, I think the Boucher is going to be very happy over there for a while, and we'll see. And I don't even know that he's necessarily the best candidate if and when the time comes that the trigger's pulled on Therrien.
Well, I know on the HIO poll, 68% of fans wanted Therrien fired after the Washington
There's a website. There's a Fire Therrien website up there. Of course, it didn't take long.
Always the easiest solution, and quite often it's the one that's taken. And you know what? I rarely have an objection when a coach is fired, because this is the cycle. And then you bring somebody else in, and it works, and it doesn't work. I mean, Claude Julien, everyone admires Claude Julien, fired here, fired in New Jersey. It's the way of the world.
He was within an overtime loss playoffs a couple of years ago, being fired again.
Good
and
point.
Comes back, wins the cup, and on he goes with Boston now.
Offense is an ongoing problem with the Canadians. You know, they can't score in the NHL. They have nobody on the farm who can score. What can Marc Bergevin do to fix this, Mike? Is this going to be a long-term project?
Well, clearly it's a long-term project. Their forwards do have to get bigger. This is a small team, and it remains a small team. There was a rumor about a trade, Parenteau and Bourque. I'm shocked that anyone would be interested in Rene Bourque, who has a couple more years at $3.33 million. Parenteau was a success on the island, but then again, you would have been okay playing with John Tavares.
Absolutely, that's right, yeah. And I just think that they couldn't have had a PK and a PA in the same room. I think it just would have been too much damn confusion, right? So, yeah, and that was one of those weird things, too, that all of a sudden this thing took hold. And I mean, any of these rumors that are out there gather legs under them, and this one sounded like there was something to it. But I mean, I think that Bergevin understands that this really, and he's gone on record as saying, I mean, he wants to build this team through the draft, and he wants to build it by developing the talent that's down on the farm. But but my eyebrow goes up when I think that Louis Leblanc is brought up to Montreal as the guy who is going to be sort of the answer to their problems when they had a call up. I mean, if that's the best that they have down on this farm, then we're certainly a ways away from being able to just use that as a pipeline.
He is their leading goal scorer on the farm, which 9 goals this season, which is quite remarkable. Now, Max Pacioretty, there's some good signs out of him in that game against Carolina. He was in the blue paint for 2 of the goals. Is this something you think he'll continue doing, Mike? I know there's frustration with Habs fans that he plays on the perimeter and doesn't go to the net enough. Do you think this is something that he can fix going forward?
I'm looking forward to his Olympic experience because players come back from the Olympics and sometimes they see themselves in a different way. They see themselves as truly an elite player. And now you're playing with a higher class of player, no disrespect intended to the Canadians, but you're playing with the cream of U.S. hockey players. And I want to see how that influences Pacioretty and how his game changes.
Absolutely. I think that's going to be a huge thing for him. He went over, had some experience at the World Championships, and this is a guy who understands what he has to do. And Pacioretty, in conversation with me this week, sort of sat down and said, you know what, sometimes we're just guilty of getting inside our heads too much, which I think illustrates that maybe hockey players have to understand that don't think as much. I mean, stop analyzing your game. Stop, trying to dig into to try to find some magical solution to what you're doing. Go out there and maybe use your instincts a little more. No matter what the coaches are telling you, no matter what the system, if something works for you, if that's how you were born and bred and that's your body type and that's what you can do, do it. Go to the net. That's what Max has got to be doing.
That win against Carolina was perfect timing because you imagine a 5-game losing streak heading into Boston.
Well, if they hadn't have won, it would have been torches and pitchforks.
And bouncing cats.
And bouncing cats. I mean, the fear was that they didn't win that game. They were playing against a team, Carolina, that had an emotional win at home against Columbus, a big comeback there, playing its 5th game in 7 nights. If you don't win that game, you're in real trouble. There was a warning sign, though, in the number of shots that the Canadians allowed towards net. And lots of people who get hung up on all the advanced metrics, puck possession. Well, I look first at the scoreboard. 3-0 is the numbers that matter. But it could have been worse, and fortunately for Montreal, it wasn't.
27 block shots and 10 more missed the target. So if those shots are not being blocked, I mean, we have a different score on that scoreboard.
We'll be back after a short break, and we'll talk a little bit about the Sochi Olympics with Michael is getting ready to head over there. Welcome back. I think I got my tongue untied from that little ending to the first segment. Michael, you're headed to Sochi. How many Olympics is this going to be for you?
This will be my 10th Winter Olympics, 18th overall. And honestly, Stu, enough's enough. Unless something goes really wrong, this will be my last.
How many have you covered now, Dave? It's
done 13 total, yeah.
What are you looking forward to most about Sochi, Michael?
Leaving Russian airspace. It's a tough grind. And I say this in semi-seriousness because when you go to an Olympics, you're working, 16-hour days?
On a good day.
On a good day, in 21 straight days. And I'm a man with white hair now.
At least you have some.
I do have some. And it's tiring, it's exhausting. I get to cover men's hockey, which is, if you had to pick one thing at these Olympics, that's it. But certainly from a Russian perspective. I was speaking with Igor Larionov not long ago, and he said, no disrespect to the biathletes and the figure skaters, but if Russia wins gold in men's hockey, they've won the Olympics. And if they don't, they've lost.
The Olympic Games now are very much about razor wire and metal detectors and security and practically DNA samples in accreditation cards. It's amazing how these games have changed. My first games was Montreal in '76, and that was the first summer games after the tragedy in Munich, but still you could walk up and down the streets of Montreal and security was basically invisible. Now, I mean, it just boggles my mind why any city or any country would want to bid for the Olympic Games, because I mean, not only do they turn your life upside down for the 16 days of the games, they change things completely for you for many, many months afterwards. I remember in Sydney in 2000, Alex Bauman, who was a great Canadian swimmer in 1984 in Los Angeles, a double gold medalist, he worked for the Australian Institute of Sport, and he literally had to drive, I think it was about 10 kilometers to go to his office, which was 2 blocks away. I mean, that's just, the city changes completely, but they still are this magical thing, and no matter what athletes will tell you about winning through the entire World Cup season or winning so many world championships and so on, it's the the Olympic stage that for some reason just seems to be the, I guess, the benchmark of credibility and justifying your career in the eyes of the public.
Now, I know your daughter's over in Russia
Yes.
now. I know the Cossacks are involved in security. What's your daughter saying about what's going on over there right now?
Well, she arrived in Sochi on Wednesday. I spoke to her on the phone. I said, "What's it like?" She says, "Muddy." Sochi is muddy. It's been raining, and she said very humid, plus 10 degrees, lots of security, and that's what we expect from an Olympics, as Dave points out, in the modern era. She's a reporter for the Moscow Times, but during the Olympics, she's working for NBC behind the cameras and helping out with their translation and research.
Now, the big ice over in Sochi, Dave, how much of a factor is this going to be for Team Canada as far as winning a gold medal?
I think when you see the large ice, all kinds of National Hockey League fans right away are going to say, boy, it'd be nice to have the NHL bring the large ice here, give you that extra 15 feet width. Never going to happen. The number of premium seats that would sacrifice and the amount of work in arenas, not going to happen.
But it's also a bad idea because you've seen enough international hockey. It's boring. It's awful. There is very little physical contact. North American fans won't like it. So I've heard it a million times. Oh, we just need the big ice. It might prevent some concussions, but as a spectacle, it's awful.
I think it's going to be a detriment to the game of a guy like Alexei Emelin, to be honest, because Emelin's big game, right, is the body check. And I think that fans or hockey players have realized that if you cross that blue line with your head up, you are taking away a good chunk of Emelin's game. And how much body checking really do you see in the Olympic arena? You don't see that much because of the extra ice and because people understand that if some of these very difficult to comprehend international referees, some of the way these officials are come down, right? I mean, you just want to be very careful about doing anything that remotely will put you in the penalty box because once it's become special teams, it's going to be a mess.
Ken Hitchcock, an assistant coach for Team Canada, puts it this way. He said, NHL ice, it's a game of emotion. International ice, it's a game of tactics. And that's what you see, very tactical games, lots of 1-4s. It's a lot of room to cover, so no one wants to make a mistake. So will it affect Canada? Canada won on big ice in Salt Lake City. A lot of people forget that. But Canada has not won outside of North America. The 2 gold medals in the NHL era, Salt Lake City and Vancouver.
Intermissions in the National Hockey League, you have little kids games and you have goalie races and all these things. I think intermissions in international games, they put chess games out at center ice, right?
Well, people who glorify the big ice game at the Olympics forget it's the best players on the world. You don't have Travis Moen and George Parros and guys like that playing on the big ice. And at the NHL level, it would be, as you say, a different game.
Plus, you're playing for your country. You slap a flag on somebody and he responds differently. And he knows he's only doing it for about 2 weeks.
It's funny, I talked to Markov about that recently, and I said, how are you going to handle the pressure playing over in Russia? I mean, playing in your motherland now, I mean, with all of this at stake, you're going to your 3rd Olympic Games, and you have all of this, and he just sort of waved at the mob of media around the dressing room. He said, look at the crap that's going on here. He said, I'm not going to have it. It's ridiculous, but different thing.
The difference is you're going to have Putin in the old Ronald Corey seat at the forum, looking over at the coach saying, I don't like that D matchup. You know, let's get somebody else
And no
out
goaltender
there.
walking by saying to Putin, I'm never going to play for this country again, right?
Now, 40% of the Russian team is made up of KHL players. Are they trying to send a message as much as the best country as well as how good their league is through the Olympics?
Absolutely not. Last time there were 9 of the 23 were KHLers, and there might have been some of that then. The issue now is there are about 20 NHLers who are Russian. So your pool is pretty small. The other thing to understand is there's been conflict, and it's getting better, but there has been conflict between the Russian Federation and the KHL. Neither is going to do either of the favors.
Put you on the spot a bit, Dave. Does Canada win gold?
I think Canada wins silver. I think that the Russians there's just too much for the Russians not to win by not winning this. And I think that the Russians are going to win the gold medal. I think that Canada is going to win the silver. Some people will say that Canada will lose the gold. They're not going to win the silver. And that's the way this country looks at it. I don't know.
I don't like the Russian back end.
No?
You know, I don't like their defense enough. I like their coach. I really do. Coach Bill, Zanatula Bilyaledinov.
Easy for you to say.
It is easy for me to say. I've practiced. But I think it's Sweden and Canada playing for gold. I think the Swedes have a terrific defense. I think they're deep. They won the last European Olympics in Turin, and those are the 2 countries.
And who's wearing the gold?
Oh, you think I'm going to answer that?
Absolutely you are.
I don't know.
That's it for this week. Michael, have a safe trip to Sochi. We'll look forward to talking with you again when you come back. And we'll be back with another show next week, and our scheduled guest is none other than Dick Irvin.